Welcome to The Nation. I'm Jessie CHAHAL. Now, tensions in the Middle East appear to be widening with reports of military actions, counterstrikes and growing regional involvement. Well, to help us understand what is verified and what remains shrouded in fog at this point of time, we're joined now by Dr. OLSI JAZEXHIU of IIUM's Department of History. Thank you for joining us, Doctor. Let's talk about the big picture here. There's lots to unpack in our conversation. As we speak, there are strong claims as well as we see some reactions from the markets as well. At this point, we're hearing claims of multiple countries as well being affected. Separate the signal from the noise for us. Give us an insight and understanding. Is this a contained flare-up, or are we at the start of something much larger?
So what happened on 28 February 2026 in the morning, around 9:30 a.m. in the morning? The Israeli regime of Benjamin Netanyahu, they assassinated the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, who was Ayatollah Khamenei. Ayatollah Khamenei, apart from being the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, he was an imam. And according to Shia Muslims, imam is someone who is holy.
Right. And
his killing has shocked the Iranians, and that branch of Islam who are known as Shia Muslims, but even the Sunni Muslims as well. The aggression against Iran was unprovoked. Iran didn't attack Israel, but this is the second time that Israel goes and attacks the Islamic Republic. The killing of Imam Khamenei was made by the Prime Minister of Israel, the war criminal who is wanted by the International Court of Crimes in The Hague, Benjamin Netanyahu, the person who made the genocide in Palestine. And he killed him because Iran was doing negotiations with the Americans in order to reach some kind of detente between the Americans and the Islamic Republic of Iran, where President Trump was asking from the Iranians for guarantees that Iran will not use its nuclear program to develop the nuclear bomb.
Right, and just going to intercept you there. Assassinations like this, they give perhaps a short-term boost, but they have long-term effects as well. Historically, when these figures become the target in conflict, does it then contain escalation, or is it fueling escalation? Because as we've seen now, there has been backfire.
We know that World War I started when the Serbian terrorist Gavrilo Princip killed Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo of what is Bosnia today. So this was the reason for Austria to declare war on Serbia, and then Russia to come to the aid of Serbia, and then to have Germany join the war. And this is how World War I started. Killing the leader of a nation in international politics and international law is considered as a casus belli, a reason for war. So the killing of Imam Khamenei by Israel, it is a war crime, it is a crime against peace, it is illegal according to international law, and moreover, Israel didn't only kill the leader of Iran, but killed a holy man, according to the Shia belief. And for this reason, what we have now is that Iran has declared war on the United States and its Gulf allies, and Israel as well. In the last 72 hours, Iranians, they are attacking and destroying US bases across the Middle East. They have bombed United Arab Emirates, Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Bahrain, they have destroyed the base of American Fifth Fleet. Qatar, they have destroyed the largest air base of the Americans in the Middle East, Al Udeid. They have bombed American bases in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, and of course they are bombing Israel, and Israelis and Americans are bombing Iran.
Right. In this noise at this point of time, with what we are seeing in some media, even on social media, we also see that the flip side of this is that some Iranians, or as we have been presented with it, welcome this escalation or this movement. How do you give context to what this could mean for Iranians?
This is a deja vu that we saw before in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, in Sudan, in Somalia. The Americans and Israelis, before they go to war against a country, like in the case of Yugoslavia, they always fund the opposition. So they weaponize the opposition, they pay them, they push them, and then they manipulate with the facts. There is an opposition in Iran, like in every country, but the Americans and Israelis, by spending billions of dollars, they push the Iranians to go and attack their state institutions. This is what they did in Libya against the government of Muammar al-Gaddafi. This is what they did in Syria. This is what they did in Iraq, and this is what they did in Egypt. Now, every country has its own opposition, but when the Americans and Israelis want to topple you, they will use this opposition in order to give a legitimization. And in the case of Iran, what we hear coming from the Americans is that they bring the justification of human rights, of oppression of women, and so forth. But these are the very governments, American and Israelis, who they committed a genocide in Gaza for the last 2 years, and they killed more than 100,000 people. And in the last 72 hours, because of American and Israeli bombings, they have killed more than 1,000 Iranians. Before coming here, I was listening to France 24, and there were some people who are against the Islamic Republic, but they were saying, look, they're bombing and killing us who don't want the Islamic Republic.
It's 2026, are we circling back on he says and she did? Should not we have a stronger, more progressive approach in which diplomacy and dialogue can prevail? Because at this time, Iran is being taken over or being governed by an interim council that consists of 3 people at this point: the president, the chief justice, and a senior cleric. That's right. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with the Iranian system, how resilient is this structure moving forward, and where does that really leave the structure of things?
Well, the Iranians were always begging the Americans to have diplomacy. But like it happened in June 2025, when the Iranians and Americans, they were reaching a deal about their nuclear program, you have always Israel, which does not want to have a deal between Americans and the Iranians. From the moment that President Donald Trump came to power and he was supported by the Jewish lobby, the first thing that Trump did is that he destroyed the nuclear deal which the United States, under the presidency of President Obama, had signed with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, after the killing of Imam Khamenei, there is a regency which has taken over the Islamic Republic. But I believe that probably tomorrow Iran is going to have a new supreme leader. Now, what is the difference between what is happening now in Iran and what was before 28th of February is that Imam Khamenei, he was a very moderate person. Even though Israel and Americans in the past few decades, they have killed many Iranian officials, they bombed their nuclear stations, they killed the president of the Islamic Republic, they killed the chief of the army. Iran was not going to war with the Americans. But now that Khamenei was killed, it seems that more radical people are taking over the country, and they have said, look, our policy of appeasement with the Americans must come to an end, because we give them concessions, and then in the middle of these concessions they come and kill us.
I'm going to hold you on that thought. And on that note, the Iranian Red Crescent has reported at least 555 deaths in Iran since the strikes began on February 28th. We take a quick break. We'll be back right here on The Nation with more. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. I'm Jessie CHAHAL. With me in the studio, Dr. OLSI JAZEXHIU. We are discussing the tensions in the Middle East that, of course, are appearing to be widening with reports that are coming in of military actions, counter-strikes, as well as growing regional involvement. We're also seeing reports of strikes and counter-strikes affecting other countries, as we discussed slightly earlier before the break, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE. The space is getting crowded. Are countries just showing that they can bite back, or is this a real irreversible expansion of the war's borders? In other words, Doctor, are we looking at World War III in its face?
Probably not World War III in 1943, 44, 45. We're probably, if we do the comparison with World War II, we're probably in September 1939, when Hitler and Stalin, they were dividing Europe. So we're having conflicts across the planet. We have the war between Russia, Ukraine, and NATO. We have Americans who are threatening a NATO member country, Denmark. They want to annex the Greenland. And then we're having an all-out war now in the Middle East. Since October 2023, Israel has bombed more than 7 countries. And now is the time for the Iranians to respond. What I understand is that the Iranians, they have declared an open war on the United States and Israel because they want to revenge their imam. And a part of their war, apart from bombing American military bases, ports, airports, they're even bombing hotels and condominiums, the places where American soldiers stay. A part of the war, apart from shooting missiles at each other, Iran is conducting a war of attrition. What does this thing mean is Iran has closed the Straits of Hormuz, so Iran will stop the oil flow to the West. Because as we know, the oil of the Gulf Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and their gas is controlled by the Americans. The American empire runs on Arab oil. So what the Iranians are doing now as a way to punish the Americans and to force them to give concessions to the Iranians is that they will stop the oil flow. And this is going to create a major world economic crisis.
Well, it's already, the global oil markets are in a state of shock as we speak as well. Oil prices are up by 8%. Now, the interim council is in place, but what is the significance of this? When a figure like Khamenei is killed, what does this symbolically mean? And as we had discussed earlier, is this structure of this interim council going to be resilient and reliable enough to help Iran through this time? Neutrally speaking as well, Dr. OLSI, how do you see this panning out for peace?
The interim council is temporary, so most probably tomorrow, I believe, the Revolutionary Guard, which runs Iran, because Iran has a special military, which is known as the Revolutionary Guard. They are very ideologically trained, and they believe that they are the army of Imam Mahdi. So they believe that it is their holy mission to liberate Palestine from the Zionists. So I believe that probably tomorrow, or maybe by the end of this week, they will elect a new Rahbar, or a new supreme leader for Iran. Now, Iran has learned from the war. We have to go back in history. When the Islamic Republic of Iran was established in 1979, the Americans, they pushed Iraq under Saddam Hussein to declare war on Iran, and the Islamic Republic had to go from 1980 to 1988, 8 years war with Iraq, and the institutions of Iran were built in a wartime. So what we saw on 28th of February when Israelis, they bombed and killed Imam Khamenei, the Iranian response came within 30 minutes. Because the Iranians, they learned their lesson in the June attack that Israel and Americans made against them, and they have created institutions. And now the desire of Netanyahu and Trump, like they have declared, is that they want to make a regime change in Iran. So what the Americans and Israelis have done for the past 2 years, they have assassinated the president of Iran, the supreme leader, the top generals of the army, nuclear scientists and others, because the assumption of the Israelis is that if we kill the top leadership, people will come to the street and they will topple the Islamic government, and then we'll have a Zionist government in Iran.
Can it be that easy?
But it cannot, because number one, Iranians are people with 6,000-year civilization. They are from the first people in the history of our planet who built empires, and they are people who respect institutions. So yeah, you can kill one imam. Imam Khamenei, he was very old. He was going to die pretty soon, 86 years old. Then a new imam will come. And then they have structures. And the Islamic Republic is a kind of replica of the Vatican. You can kill the Pope, but there are other cardinals who will come and replace him. So for people who study the history of religions and who know how the Vatican works and the Lateran councils, where they, whenever the Pope dies, they elect a new Pope among the cardinals, the same thing is in Iran. One supreme leader dies, you have other clerics who have a council. So in the Sunni context here in Malaysia, we can call them like muftis. So they have a big gathering, and then they elect one among them who will be the leader.
Okay, there are some conspiracy theories that are going around, and perhaps, you know, I have you here now, and perhaps you could give us some clarity from your perspective, that all this movement and this escalation and these actions and strikes, attacks, if you will, are to cover up the Epstein files and what's happened in Venezuela as well. What is this equation? How does this balance out? Give us perhaps from your lens, what does this
According
look
to
like?
many American analysts, people like Tucker Carlson and others, they believe that the Epstein files were used by Israeli Mossad to blackmail the US President Donald Trump. And we know that Israeli Secret Service, they have penetrated the US empire, so you cannot become a president of the United States until and unless the IPAC, which is the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, gives you the go-ahead. And we know that Mossad did this with President Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky affair. The Americans, Hollywood, they even made a movie with Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. The title of the movie is Wake the Dog, where they show how American presidents, they are very fragile to sex stories. And like it happened with Bill Clinton, whom the Jewish lobby in the time, they forced him to bomb Iraq and to organize what was called the Operation Desert Fox. I think they did the same with Trump. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, US president, he wanted to have a deal with the Iranians. The slogan of Donald Trump when he was elected was that no more wars. And if we see the history of Donald Trump when he was in opposition, he was making jokes and he was making irony to Obama and Biden, and they were saying these people are sending us to never-ending wars. And his movement, MAGA, Make America Great Again, its slogan was that once I come to power, I'm going to give an end to the wars. And he even famously told to the ex-US President Joe Biden, and he told him, look, what did we win by going after Afghanistan and Iraq? We spent $8 trillion. So the intentions of Trump were positive, but from the moment that he came into office, he was manipulated by Netanyahu, who has some kind of power over US presidents. And for those people who study Netanyahu, like my students do at the IIUM, I ask them to read his books, is that since 1995, when he wrote the book Fighting Terrorism, he has given the blueprint that the American empire has to follow in the coming decades in order to defeat Islam. So the war against Iraq, the war against Afghanistan, the war against Libya, Syria, Egypt, all were designed by Netanyahu.
And this is something you firmly believe, and you would relate this back to the fact that the Israelis have the Mossad, and that is their weapon or tool.
Not only Mossad, but even the Jewish lobby and the banks. Look, I mean, America is not a democracy like Malaysia, is not a democracy like we know the democracies to function in Europe. You will be elected as the president of the United States if the corporations want you. And unfortunately, in the United States, the money is controlled by the Jewish mafia. Since the Civil War of the north of United States and with the Union States in time of Abraham Lincoln, every US president who has come to office had to obey to the bankers. Mm-hmm. If the bankers do not want you, you are out of power.
Now, we understand that Trump, and as you've pointed out and shared with us as well, is that Trump does want a regime change, and that is the target at this point of time. In a high-tension environment with what's happening at this point, how big a risk is one strike that can trigger some sort of unintended escalation? Everything now seems to be quite precise in its targets. And so is there any room for error, or are these errors also something that's been calculated?
Now, if I can correct you about Trump, is that I don't think that Trump wants a regime change. I think Trump, he doesn't know what he needs in Iran. If you have read his book, Art of the Deal, Trump is a trader. He's like somebody who is specialized on selling and buying. So yes, he was putting maximum pressure on Iran, but he, like we have seen in Venezuela, where he sent the US Army and abducted Nicolas Maduro, there was no regime change in Venezuela. Trump has no ideological issues with Iran. Trump simply wants to have a deal with Iran and to make sure that Iran will not support Palestine and will join the Abraham Accords, which means will surrender to Israeli hegemony. But if the Islamic Republic one day will say, okay, we will abandon the Palestinians and we will recognize Israel, Trump will have no problem with the Islamic Republic. But the problem is that it is not Trump who does American foreign policy towards the Middle East. It is Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel.
Well, thank you, Doctor. We want to, of course, thank you for your perspective and for sharing your opinion on that, whether, that is reflective of the current state of affairs. Well, as events continue to unfold at this point, and with clarity and careful analysis, we aim to bring you that, and that is essential at this point of time. It's in a moment of heightened tension. We want to, of course, separate verified developments from speculation. That for us is more important than ever. Thank you for watching The Nation. Dr. OLSI, thank you for coming in as well. Do join us for more in-depth conversations that matter. Keep it locked on to Bernama TV. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.